news and views brought to you by myself, Vicky Esther Chang, especially and exclusively for Lifestyle TV USA, and you will hear from me, myself as the Asian Chief, about news from this part of the region, Singapore, Malaysia, Indonesia, especially on the current affairs of people, business and economy. Thank you for joining me, and you have another 20 minutes with me about the latest Singapore news. And for today, the 29th July 2021, as we go into the second half of 2021, I bring to you some of the latest news of Singapore for the week. And today I have the news for you about Singapore's rising of COVID-19 cases. And we are going to see the numbers that has risen and reported by the Minister of Health himself, Mr. Ong Ye Kung. And we also talked about the petition by parents in Singapore signing a petition online on change.org about stopping schooling in schools and returning to home-based learning due to the background of the situation of the rising cases amongst students, and the explanation by the Ministry of Education saying that it doesn't call for necessarily all the schools to be closed. So only selected schools that are affected by COVID-19 surge will stay home as home-based learning. And we also see the news from the minister himself, Minister of Health, Mr. Ong Ye Kung, about the surge in hospitalization in Singapore, especially so within the backdrop of the surge of COVID-19 positive cases in Singapore. And finally, also I will bring to you the number of measures of packages announced by the Minister of Finance himself, Mr. Lawrence Wong, about support and help for small, medium-sized SMEs, hawkers and individuals who are affected in this second semi-lockdown of Singapore. A review of Singapore COVID-19 pandemic situation. The minister has announced from Thursday, July 22nd until 18th of August, Singapore will revert to phase 2 heightened alert, with tighter measures in place to curb the worsening COVID-19 situation. And that heightened alert phase, which is phase 2 in Singapore, will start from 22nd July to 18th August. And published by the Singapore broadsheet, the Straits Times, on the 27th July 2021 on a Tuesday, these are some of the additional measures that support individuals and the small medium enterprises and hawkers from May to August. And this is announced by the Finance Minister himself, Mr. Lawrence Wong. From these times, there will be rental relief for hawkers and eligible SMEs and non-profit organizations. And that is, number 1, there will be 4 weeks of rental waiver for tenants of governmental-owned commercial properties. And also, there will be 2 weeks of rental relief cash payouts for tenants and occupiers of privately owned commercial properties. Thirdly, landlords will now be required to match government relief and offer 2 weeks of rental support to tenants. So these are some of the rental relief for SMEs and tenants. Next, for jobs, there will be enhanced jobs support scheme for affected sectors. Number 1, 60% wage support for F&B, sports, performing arts, and arts education from July 22nd to August 18th. Second, 40% for rental affected personal care services, tourism, and family attractions from July 22nd to August 18th. These sectors will receive 50% and 30% support from May 16 to July 11 and will get 10%
from July 12 to 21st and August 19 to 31. And also, the Finance Minister, Mr. Lawrence Wong, announced recovery grant that is temporary for COVID-19 situations. Number one, up to $700 will be given for workers who were placed on involuntary no-pay leave. Number two, up to $500 for those who lost at least 50% of their income for at least 1 month due to tightened safe measurement. Then also, these are some of the application period that is given by Mr. Lawrence Wong. All these temporary grants are extended until August 31st, and also the current recipients can apply for a second payout. So these are some of the measures that is additional from May to August. Mr. Lawrence Wong also continued, there will be support for hawkers with a one-time payout of $500 under the Market and Hawker Center Relief Fund. Number two, there will be more than $9 million worth of rental waivers and subsidies for table cleaning and dishwashing services. Next, the Finance Minister also talked about driver relief fund for eligible taxi and private hired car drivers. Number one, $10 per vehicle per day for 60 days from July, with an additional top-up of $10 per vehicle each day from July 22nd to August 31st. Also, there will be additional relief fund for $5 per vehicle per day for the next 30 days and additional top-up of $5 per vehicle each day in the month of September. So these are some of the measures that are announced by Finance Minister Mr. Lawrence Wong for the COVID-19 support measures from May to August, which is published in the Singapore Straits Times, the Singapore broadsheet.
And as you can see from the graph, on the 7-day moving average, the number of community cases which are unlinked and linked is already surging, but it's coming about a gradual decline in the number of cases in a couple of days before. And if you look at the graph released by the Ministry of Health in the 7-day moving average, the number of community unlinked cases is quite worrisome. And unlinked cases means that it is a precursor to the tip of the iceberg about clusters to come. And these are the numbers that is surging in Singapore as the team is trying very hard to trace and track and then quarantine the number of suspected COVID-19 cases. And as we know also, positive cases, which is COVID-19, there is an incubation period about 7 to 14 up to 28 number of days. But with the Delta variant, there is still not sufficient data about the incubation period for the Delta variant that is surging across Asia right now. And also for the second graph, you can see there is the race in the local cases in the last 14 days by age and the vaccination status about the people. That the graph that is released by the Ministry of Health for those that are of mid-age group, there is a surge also in the number of vaccinated people reinfected by the Delta variant. And here, even though we are not told about whether this is the classical Delta variant or the UK variant or the South African variant, we are largely seeing across the board in Asia the rise in Delta variant of COVID-19 cases. So therefore, you can see that reinfection among vaccinated adults And of course, it is also affecting young children as well. Finally, you have the graph released by the Ministry of Health about the cases on the last 14 days on community unlinked and linked cases in the last 14 days by detection method, which means that they are required for a swab or that they are required for voluntary self-detection with the self-test kits. So in Singapore, we are already selling the self-test kits in the supermarkets, particularly in pharmacies, and you can also buy some of these kits online. But the suspicion is that will you as an individual be prudent and cautious enough to do your self-test every other day for 14 days because of the incubation period? I mean, it's not good enough to have a self-test every 14 days, and let alone people who are already working and who are always working in groups or in social groups, even though in Singapore, in the semi-lockdown we're talking about now, social groups are only reduced to 2 person in any group setting, and in homes you are only allowed 2 individuals who are not within the households to visit you within the household. So therefore, ladies and gentlemen, in Singapore we are in a semi-lockdown situation with 2 individuals in a social setting that is allowed, and also 2 individuals to come into your homes. So ladies and gentlemen, these are the graphs that is released by the Ministry of Health that is always updated almost every day, and you can always find it in moh.gov.sg, and the news is brought to you here by myself by the Ministry of Health in all these graphs.
And according to the news yesterday, published on the website of Channel News Asia, the national television channel of Singapore, Mr. Ong Ye Kung reiterates that Singapore hospital beds could fill up in a week if a COVID-19 cluster grows uncontrollably. And he also said that protecting Singapore's healthcare system was a deeper underlying reason for going back to tighter COVID-19 measures in recent weeks, said the Health Minister, Mr. Ong Ye Kung, on Wednesday, 28th of July. And he was speaking at a virtual award ceremony for healthcare scholarships. Mr. Ong explained in greater detail how rising COVID-19 cases could overwhelm Singapore's hospital capacity. And according to Mr. Ong, he said that the largest cluster in Singapore, the Jurong Fishery Port cluster, was spanning clusters in many markets which have to be closed. There is a risk that it transmits far and wide in our community, especially to seniors who frequent the markets, said Mr. Ong. A quarter of them remain unvaccinated, referring to the seniors, and they are at risk of falling very ill if they are infected with COVID-19. Against this risk, we look at our hospital capacity for COVID-19 patients. Among Singapore's active COVID-19 cases as of Tuesday, 21 patients have serious illness requiring oxygen, and 2 are in critical condition in intensive care unit. More than 540 are in stable condition in hospitals, while another 1,234 are in community care facilities. Singapore can open up about 1,000 intensive care units, beds for critically ill COVID-19 patients if needed, Mr. Ong said. He noted that although only a small handful of ICU beds are now occupied by COVID-19 patients, authorities have already opened up close to 70 beds, which is double the number from 2 weeks ago. We are preparing to open up more ICU beds these few weeks, he said. Singapore has also increased the number of isolation beds for COVID-19 patients in hospitals to about 1,000. About 80% of these beds are currently occupied, some by suspected COVID-19 cases, said Mr. Ong. If the number of COVID-19 hospitalizations goes up further, more patients would have to be discharged to community care facilities and more beds would have to be repurposed for COVID-19, and hospitals may have to defer care and scale back beds for patients without COVID-19. The odds of a large surge in cases are stacked against us. We knew that when a cluster grows uncontrollably, infection numbers would double every 7 to 10 days, which meant that hospital beds could fill up in a week. Beyond that, we could be overwhelmed, Mr. Ong said. And according to the news published on Today newspaper on the 28th July yesterday, it says that some parents call for full home-based learning after a spate of cases among students. The Ministry of Education says schools remain safe because some parents hope that children can stay home owing to the recent rise in cases among students, while other parents want schools to remain open as they felt their children were more distracted with home-based learning. According to the news yesterday, on the 28th July 2021, more than 5,200 people have signed an online petition calling for the rollout of home-based learning for students aged 18 and under. Some parents hope their children can stay home owing to the recent rise in COVID-19 cases among students. Other parents want schools to remain open as they felt their children were more distracted studying from home. Based on the Ministry of Education's current assessment, there is no need to shift all schools to home-based learning. Health experts agree with the approach of keeping schools open as much as possible. With the recent spike in COVID-19 cases in the wider community, a mother, Madam Chan, wishes she has the option of keeping her 8-year-old son at home with the support of his teachers. I hesitate every day to let my child go to school, the 44-year-old housewife said. Her son is a primary 2 pupil at a school in the eastern part of Singapore. She declined to give her full name or reveal the school her son attends for privacy reasons. Her concern stems from coronavirus cases surfacing in schools island-wide of late. Madam Chan is among more than 5,200 people who have called for signing on a petition on change.org calling for the rollout of home-based learning for students aged 18 and below. The petition started last week noted that not everyone below 12 and 18 has been fully vaccinated against COVID-19.
So there you have it, ladies and gentlemen, and news for you today, the Thursday, 29th July 2021, and we are already in the second half of the year 2021. And what have you accomplished in 2020 and the earlier part of 2021? And the news for you, news and views to myself, Asian Chief for Lifestyle TV USA, and I've brought to you about the situation of the pandemic, COVID-19 situation, the rise in the hospitality cases, and also the surge in the number of positive cases, and also raising against vaccination rates in Singapore. So this is the race we have it here in Singapore, and I think across the region, vaccination rates versus the COVID-19 spread. We will see who will win this race in the Olympics, especially in the backdrop of the Olympics in Tokyo, Japan. So ladies and gentlemen, myself, from me to you, from Singapore, all the love, protection and safety to you and your families.